By now, roguelike fans are undoubtedly aware of Dead Cells, consistently praised as one of the genre's crowning achievements. Many within that space are also familiar with Evil Empire, a studio that handled a share of that game's development over the years. And now that the work on Dead Cells has finally reached its conclusion, the individual teams have spun off into their own projects, with Evil Empire teaming up with Ubisoft for a roguelike entry in the historic Prince of Persia series. The Rogue Prince of Persia first launched in Steam Early Access in mid-2024, and recently hit its 1.0 release on consoles and PC. During that time, it received substantial visual updates and also shaped how it plays, and I was actually eager to see how the final product came together as someone who skipped the Early Access period. And after completing over a dozen runs, it's become one of my favorite iterations in the genre, balancing distinction and inspiration in equal measure. But let's unpack that in this review. The Rogue Prince of Persia follows the titular hero as he tries to save Persia from the Hun invasion. This catastrophe is seemingly a consequence of his own making, but thanks to a special bola he carries, he respawns at the oasis upon death and gets another shot each time. Across every attempt, the prince can rescue and recruit allies who then offer practical benefits at the hub. The narrative serves as a supplemental backdrop to progression, which is the real draw here. Still, there's some appreciated personality here, particularly when the prince reminisces about his home and family. He shows a surprising emotional vulnerability with those close to him, all while tossing off a bit of quippiness towards foes when the moment calls for it. The rest of the cast leans on one note, though the broad characterizations let you infer more than is stated. Gameplay is a central appeal, and the Rogue Prince of Persia cements itself as phenomenal for one primary reason: movement. The game smartly leverages the series' parkour identity by placing it in the core of progression. The prince can dash, vault between ledges, wall run, and even transition into the background layer when climbable surfaces appear there. That last piece actually creates a layered mix of 2D and 3D navigation, and when you hit your flow state, the platforming feels sublime, like a dance where you settle into an addictive rhythm that rewards skill and composure. Bolstering this design is the Valles breath meter, a resource that rises and falls based on recent platforming and successful dodges. When it's full, the prince gains a speed boost for as long as you can maintain it. This all ends up creating a clear path of growth you can feel from run to run, reinforced by biomes filled with distinct hazards and traversal routes. That said, progression is not as typical as it might first appear. One of the game's standout choices is how you unlock new areas. Alongside two types of permanent currency used to open cosmetics, weapons, and equipable medallions at the oasis, broader advances are tied to a menu called the Mind Map. As the prince talks to certain characters and examines specific objects or locations during a run, the mind map updates a graph of ongoing objectives and connections. This encourages exploration beyond combat upgrades and helps keep the time loop structure compelling. Filling out this mind map adds a gentle sense of linearity that grounds the stakes, since the prince is repeatedly reliving the invasion to mitigate the damage as best he can. The reward loops keep you moving. Beyond the permanent currencies, the prince levels up across runs, and each level grants a point you can spend on fixed hub perks. These range from starting with gold, which are the mid-currency for abilities and weapon enhancements, to gaining more manual heals or revives. Once you complete your first run, you can enable restrictions at the oasis that make specific components tougher in exchange for increased payout or permanent currency. An NPC also dishes out missions that nudge you towards different playstyles and routes, with further rewards feeding even more items into the pool. What helps maintain uniqueness across each run is the game's relatively compact scale. While there's a fair number of areas and characters to meet, it stops short of overwhelming quantity. The trade-off is that the biomes don't always show deep variation in room formats across replays. At least this is how it felt in practice. I didn't go as far to map them out though. Over time, I wanted some layouts to branch more dramatically in order to reduce the occasional sense of retreading identical ground. Still, this is all the natural byproduct of roguelike repetition. And the strong platforming and combat kept their bite despite repeated formations, but a touch of more variety would have helped late run longevity. combat itself stays moderately straightforward. The prince can wield several weapon types unlocked via blueprints or at the oasis, each with distinct animation timings and specials. Sub-weapons supplement the core kit and run on their own energy gauges that prevent spamming. Like the traversal, combat feel is excellent. Inputs are sharp and hit reactions read clearly, and enemy telegraphs are easy to parse. The overall difficulty sits on the lower side for the genre, yet run success still leans on execution because luck only carries you so far with item draws. Key maneuvers include vaulting over enemies to avoid hits, kicking to deflect projectiles, and using environmental hazards or friendly fire to thin crowds. Also, encounters are flexible enough that you can improvise acrobatic solutions that feel right at home for this series. As the praise suggests, I had a consistently great time, though I wish there were more bosses. The game offers only a handful, and they land in the moderate challenge level, so I was ready for additional tests after just a few successful clears. My broader critique is that for as polished as the roguelike Prince of Persia is, it doesn't reach the amount of content that I personally wanted. The pristine movement and combat aren't enough to push it to the absolute limits, which feels like a missed opportunity. Still, that compactness can also read as refreshing if you're tired of roguelikes demanding dozens or hundreds of hours. The scale here is intentional and will suit many players. Technical performance could use a little tuning as well. On PS5 the game was stable and responsive, but the loads between zones were surprisingly long, and the UI occasionally glitched when zooming into the map. Controls are remappable on console and there are useful accessibility options. Presentation is vibrant and the soundtrack settles into a soothing groove that fits the franchise's mood. If you're not enamored with roguelikes or roguelites, the sheer number of releases can feel a little excessive. I don't disagree with that sentiment even as someone who has favorite corners of the genre. When these games are done well though, they spark a raw desire to try just one more run, and the Rogue Prince of Persia fits that mold. With a strong gameplay loop and a reward structure that makes a tangible difference, the Prince of Persia DNA in storytelling and parkour sits front and center. It may not reach the heights of the genre's absolute masterpieces, but the roguelike Prince of Persia knows exactly what it wants to be and delivers on that aim with confidence. If you're a fan of roguelites, Prince of Persia, or both, this smaller scale outing is well worth your time. Noisy Pixel is giving the Rogue Prince of Persia an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.